Welcome to the Everyday Grief Podcast. I'm Dr. Anitra, the Everyday Grief Coach, seminarian, and sacred companion in this work of healing through honest story and communal presence. This is the final episode in our three-part series, You Are Not a Line Item. Now, if you've been with me through the first two conversations, you know we've been talking about grief that follows layoffs, how grief unsettles our identity, how shame keeps us from telling the truth, and how story becomes the doorway to healing. But I want to invite us today to take a step back, to zoom out a little bit, because I want you to notice that grief and the way that we've been naming it is not just yours, it's ours. And so this episode is called The Grief of the Marketplace. And we're going to talk about the moral injury, the emotional disconnection, and the spiritual numbness that's becoming more and more common, not because we're broken, but because we've been taught to grieve alone. We have been taught to grieve alone. And you may have done that for many reasons, grieving alone, because it is something that you feel like you need to do because you don't want to overburden someone else. So I want you to just be present to what you may be carrying alone. So in the last episode, I talked and I shared that during my own layoff, I wasn't just holding my pain, I was also holding other people's heartbreak about what happened to me. Friends, these were some of my colleagues, dearest colleagues that I work with every day, and church members. They were devastated. They were confused. They were shaken. And they came to me, the one who was going through the layoff, for comfort. And I want to share a little bit more about that because they came to me to support me, but found that I was so distinct in the way I was laboring emotionally, and that I had already kind of been supporting myself in soothing and sense making and in thinking about what I most needed. So by the time they came to me, I was okay, but under the surface, there was anxiety, worry, uncertainty about what would be on the other side of the conversations I would have with them. And so noticing the way that I kind of was easy with my tone and conversation, emotional, but not overly so in the way that they might label it as emotionally laborious or heightened emotionality, they began to confess like their concerns, like, if this were to happen to me, this would be what. And a lot of times that's how we talk about things. You might remember that from the last episode. But they kept saying things like, how are you so calm, Anitra? How are you still praying? And how are you still standing? And I get exactly where they were. You might be going through the same thing. And I want you to give those people that are in your life coming to you some grace. My friends, my colleagues, my church members were trying to process something that didn't make sense to them because they understood the calling, the intensity by which I worked, right? But in that moment, I also realized I was grieving and still responsible for being the emotional anchor. That is the grief of being a strong one. You might know that one. Remember the memes that happened during the pandemic where people would say, check on your strong friends? You might be the strong friend. You might be the strong one. You might be the safe one. You may be the steady one. You may be the person that others collapse into even when you're barely holding on yourself. And I want you to know something, that though charitable, though healing in its nature, it's not a sustainable strategy. And it's not required. There's something deeper here that I want to explore with you. We live in this marketplace that has trained us to disconnect from grief. And this marketplace, just for you to know, is whenever it is that we are in an environment like going to work in a corporation, if we are working for ourselves as entrepreneurs, if you are in a social sector organization that is service-oriented, all of us are engaged in that kind of a marketplace because there are good services, talents that are being exchanged for money so that one can make and go beyond ends meet, right? And so that is what we're talking about when we talk about a marketplace. And that very thing, when you are in that space of marketing, selling, and otherwise engaging in the cycle that produces profits, that also doesn't allow you to engage your grief, one with another or within yourself. Oftentimes, we treat layoffs like a business decision, and we call grief a soft skill. We are in this cycle within the marketplace of prioritizing speed, constant pivoting, and productivity over presence. So people are passing you by. There's no water cooler conversation. There's no email to check and see how you're doing, because the presumption is you're handling it. They've outsourced you to EAP. You should be able to use that and come right on back to work. And so there's all these other things that's happening, but stopping by your desk or calling you up for a meeting or checking on you for a Zoom, all the other things that we might associate with a grief forward, a resilient forward workplace, that may not be happening in your environment. And so when you are now in this space where your presence is discounted, that in and of itself is a level of a moral injury. Plain and simple. It's what Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky calls the trauma of bearing witness to harm without having the tools or power to change it. It's Darcy Harris's concept of disenfranchised grief, grief that isn't socially validated, so it becomes invisible. So no one is walking around talking to one another about their grief. That's not happening on a day-to-day basis. You may see it happening more recently, but typically that's not in the nomenclature to be able to come up and talk about one another's grief. We oftentimes are just simply asking, how was your day? And expecting short, brief answers. And the presence, the emotional and spiritual presence that we need to give, irrespective of our context, is absent. So Bell Hooks has said one time, to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow. These are invitations to be human in a mechanistic kind of workplace that isolates and minimizes emotionality, particularly when there's a lot of volume and when leaders and individual contributors are not skilled in how to support grief. It is not simply a soft skill. It's a way of being. We have to get to a place where we are not just seeing things around severance packages in silence, wishing you the best emails, job postings for our replacement before our inbox is even shut down. That's what we experience during the times of layoffs, and they've been happening at such speed. You can barely get the email out, right? And so this is not just about workplace culture anymore. When we look at all that's going on every day, we neglect to be fully and emotionally present. It's not just about the workplace culture now. This is about a soul loss we're encountering together. So I want to talk about who's grieving, not just the person laid off, but it's the colleague that is left behind, wondering if they're next. This is the reason why people will disconnect from you when you're laid off, because they're wondering if the next round is going to impact them. I know that from experience. And it's challenging to be in both places, because anytime someone is laid off, it creates a level of workplace anxiety, fear of a job loss. The other person who is involved is the manager. They're also grieving. The manager who didn't want to make the decision, but they didn't have the power to say no. And that is a particular type of grief. And I talked about that in an earlier episode this season. There's the caregiver who is now questioning how they'll provide. So if you've been laid off and you have a particular role that places you as a caregiver, or there's someone in your household who is taking up the slack because you're not working, now they have the additional burden of trying to figure out how they're going to provide for your household and for you in every way, emotionally, and all the other things that grief of job loss presents. There is the entrepreneur still carrying unprocessed grief from a job that failed them but never got to mourn it. Some of us are moving so quickly, trying to rebound because of the economic necessity of doing so, or not wanting to deal with the emotional rejection around a job loss, that we'll spin up businesses and then do all that we need not do to mask the fact that there are these underlying griefs that we've not processed. Then there's the witness, those who are watching all of it and slowly disconnecting to survive. And you may have seen them. You thought that they were your friends at work, your workplace BFFs, and somehow they become distant. They move on because you've become a line item to them, just another person going through this layoff. So this grief will show up for you and for those that I've named as exhaustion, numbness, suspicion, hypervigilance, lack of joy or creativity, avoiding collaboration, and you losing some of the language for hope. Sometimes you just don't know how to talk about hope when you're so overwhelmed with grief. But I want to pronounce over your life that we're not weak. We're not being dramatic. We're unprocessed. We're wounded. We're waiting for someone to say, it's okay to feel what you feel. So I'm saying it right now. It's okay. You are not wrong for feeling hurt. You are not soft for needing care. You are human. You are human. So now how do we begin to heal? We do it the way our ancestors always did. We did it through then, and we shall do it now. We do it through ritual, through story, through community, through compassion. Alan Wolfelt reminds us grief needs to be witnessed, not rushed. So there are 4 ways to begin. 1, I want you to create a grief ritual for what was lost. Light a candle, write a goodbye letter, name what mattered, Not just the job, but what it gave to you, the structure of it, the belonging, the purpose. Tell your story in safe spaces. And if you need some support around that, I have provided that in the very last episode of this series, in episode number 2. Tell your story in safe spaces. I want you to evaluate that. Share with someone who doesn't need you to move on, but is willing to sit with it now. You can't tell the story to everyone. You have to be able to discern who you can share it with. And I gave you some language around how to do that effectively in episode 2. So I want to ask you to please go back and listen to that one. It will really support you. Ask for what you need and do so in a very clear way. You are allowed to say, I'm not okay. I'm not ready to network. I just need someone to listen. 4th, I want you to join a space of communal healing. So this is the kind of work that I hold. I do grief coaching. I do retreats. I do sacred circles, group calls, where people don't have to carry the pain alone. You can even join the Everyday Grief community. It's a digital community that you can join. Does not charge you anything to do that. But I want you to know that you are not meant to heal in isolation. You are meant to heal in community. When we are wounded, it is important for us to seek first aid, because otherwise things can happen to that part of our bodies. It doesn't allow it to function the way it needs to. So when you are wounded, I want to invite you, when you're emotionally wounded, when your soul feels like something is missing because your assignment is missing from your life, I want to invite you to seek community. Community may look like calling up your friends, taking in a sport with them, sitting down for brunch with them, eating snacks with them, sitting out on the patio, going for a walk. It may include sitting with a therapist, a pastoral counselor, a grief coach. It may include going to your faith community and engaging people there and just telling your story. There is some work that you have to do. Put on your own grief GPS system and identify who can you share your story with. Not unload your story, but to share the brief story of what's happening and the highlight and its impact, so that you give people a way in to support you. Most of us really still want to do that. We are deeply human and committed to healing others. So I want you to consider how you do those 4 things. Create a grief ritual for what was lost. Tell your story in safe spaces. Ask for what you need. Join a space of communal healing. So today, here's what I want you to come away with. I want to leave you with this blessing and a call to community. If you're feeling the weight of a system that doesn't see you, if you've been quiet because you don't think anyone can hold your grief, if you're tired of performing strength when your soul is unraveling, I want you to know you are not alone. There is nothing wrong with you. You are simply grieving, and you are worthy of being witnessed, of being held, of healing at a pace that honors your story. And if you want support, if you're ready to work with someone who understands this grief, not just intellectually, but spiritually, communally, and personally, I'd love to walk with you. Visit me and my work at www.everydaygriefcoach.com. That's everydaygriefcoach.com. There you can learn more about how we can work together, whether through one-on-one coaching, group support, or one of our upcoming grief circles where we do group coaching. I hold space for the grief that our culture tries to ignore. You are not a line item. You are a life, and your grief deserves sacred space. So I want to provide you with a closing blessing. If you'd like to close your eyes and place yourself in a position of receiving, if it is safe for you. May the systems not steal your soul. May your story be heard in full. May the grief you carry be met with tenderness. And may your healing invite others to hope again. Hope is waiting on the other side always for you. Hope is waiting in the valley, waiting for you to notice that there is hope. Even in the anguish, even in the pain of the moment, know that hope is still there, waiting, hoping that you see that it's been there all along, giving you possibilities and options for you to grow through, to move through, and to be able to have this sacred journey that brings you to a place of peace, resonance, and resilience. You can have the capacity to adapt, and you can move forward with every bit of grace that this moment can give you. And as you're going through, I want to acknowledge and see you as able to welcome the learning that even this experience is unfolding in and for you. I'm here for you. Be well.